down tells this story. My counselor gave me the strangest advice a few months ago. Almost out of the blue, she said, "You should start waiting in the longest lines you can find." She meant everywhere: the grocery store, getting my car's emission checked, ordering dinner last in the group of friends. I hadn't even been talking about patience or anything. I had been talking about my life in general. But she wanted me to wait more. I do not want to wait more. I want to wait less. I look around my life and there seems to be lots of places where I see others get to go first and I have to wait my turn, and it is frustrating. My counselor wanted me to practice waiting, Annie goes on. So even when I'm running short of time, I now choose a parking spot as far away from the store entrance as possible. And when I'm exhausted after work, I pick the longest grocery line I possibly can. You know, the one behind the woman with all the coupons and the tiny things in her basket, more than anyone would thought humanly possible, she concludes. I read Annie's story and thought to myself, gosh, I got the same advice once, many years ago, from a spiritual director shortly after I had graduated from divinity school and long before the advent of cell phones. Back in the era when we used to love to run for the telephone. Do you remember those days? Anyway, she told me when the phone rings, don't run to pick it up. Rather, pause for a moment and say to yourself, the phone is ringing. And then only pick up the phone. The kingdom of God is like Jesus teaches in today's passage. It's like a group of women with official wedding responsibilities who are waiting to greet the bridegroom. And he is delayed, and who knows for how long. But it is these bridesmaids' job to meet the bridegroom. What is the job of our lives? What is waiting about? As is often the case, when you read this parable, we shouldn't try to read it too allegorically. Still, it provides some useful images of what can happen to us while we wait. Distractions, I think, or lack of preparing for the wait, or being ready to wait, and so on. Yesterday, I was at the airport at a layover in LaGuardia. I was on the way back from meeting my siblings for a little bit of a long weekend as we tried to conduct a little business for shared property and enjoy each other's company. Anyway, there I was in LaGuardia for 5 hours. Now, luckily, I was prepared. I had brought my computer with me, and I was able to write this sermon while just sitting there. But at a certain point, I stopped and looked around my gate area, and I counted 27 people. 22 of them were looking at their phones. One was digging through her purse, 2 were talking to each other, and 1 was dozing. Is this what Jesus had in mind was this what he meant when he said wait and keep awake? Maybe just that one guy dozing was the problem. After all, many people do describe life as a waiting room that we wait through until we meet Jesus. And to be sure, Jesus had very specific instructions at the end of this parable. Keep awake, Jesus says. Now, early Christians, those to whom Matthew wrote this gospel, believed that the second coming of Jesus was imminent, would happen any moment. And whether we share that belief in the second coming of Jesus as quite a literal thing, or think of it as mystical and transcendent, or just think it's an after-death encounter that will happen for us, I think that we can all agree that here what is happening on earth right now cannot be God's ideal picture of the way the world should be. I think we would all say that God desires far more peace and harmony, less anger and outrage, less loneliness, posturing and jockeying for advantage. Our Micah passage this week and Amos last week, if you remember, reminds us of God's enormous investment in compassion, justice, and the care of the least in our midst. Hope is an investment in God's vision. Hope makes us aware of the time between the now and the consummation of that reign of God that we're looking forward to. What Jesus is bidding us to do in this keep awake has very little to do with Red Bull and 3 cups of coffee. It is the kind of awareness that Annie Downs' counselor was advising, or my spiritual director. Be aware might be a better translation. Indeed, Eugene Peterson, in his Message translation, renders it, stay alert. Keep your eyes open for those who are a part of the community that God gave you. Be attentive to the use of your time and resources. Make sure that you are using these for holy value, not time-sucking habits. Listen to this poem. It begins with a list of waiting and then ends with this powerful little story in miniature. This is a poem by Joe Taylor. I am waiting for the traffic light to change. Luck, too. For someone to answer my phone call, to break into the repetitive recording, your waiting time is less than 30 minutes. I am waiting for the right opportunity. I am waiting to lose weight, to sound like Lady Gaga, to take her place alongside Tony Bennett. I am waiting to find a bone marrow match for the love of my life, who's been with me nearly all my life. I recently read of a French woman imprisoned 38 years in the Tower of Constance for practicing her faith. According to tradition, she became her fellow prisoners' lifeline to the outside world, writing letters to improve the conditions in the dark, dank tower, teaching her sisters to read and write, and pass the time watching her carve Resiste with her knitting needle into the dungeon's stone wall. I want to be like that woman. I want to wait on while I wait for. What shall we wait on? What shall we wait on? Shall we wait on those beloved of God, those for whom we can offer compassion, a shared cry for justice, material aid, even while we wait for Jesus to come with the morning, dawning in light and beauty, life to joy awakening? Keep awake. Wait for the one brighter than the glorious morn, Emmanuel, Christ in beauty come, the one who will finally rescue us and all people from waiting and for waiting on others.